All right, since we've done the force and motion review, let us get into some practice questions, okay? So make sure you have your test taking strategies if you need them. If not, let's go ahead and get started. So you would first read the questions on your own, each one that we would go through. If you want to do them all, pause and do them all, and then we come back and talk, that's fine. If you feel at this point that you've gotten really familiar with your strategies and you feel like you can read each question only one time and do everything you need to do, that's fine too. Just remember that with science, it's different from math, the math that we've actually talked about as far as doing test-taking strategies, because science, you really need to know your subject matter. So if you don't know the vocabulary and you're clueless about what they're talking about, you can use process of elimination if you know a few of the terms and you know that it's definitely not something or the other. You can do that, but for the most part, you need to be able to come up with your answer first, okay? So let's get started. Number 1. What pulls objects to the center of the earth? The one thing that I would, if I was going to underline anything or circle anything, it'd be pulls. And you could do center of the earth if you felt like you needed to. So now you want to think about what actually relates to pulling things toward the center of the earth. Motion. Motion doesn't necessarily have to do with earth. So I'm going to mark that one out. Friction. Let's keep friction for now. Gravity definitely has to do with the center of the earth. Acceleration. If you remember what acceleration is, it's when things speed up, and that doesn't really have much to do with the earth. So it's not very specific. And force. Force is not very specific to the earth either. At this point, there's others that are more specific. So I want to talk about B and C. Some people may get confused between friction and gravity. Friction is when things rub together, not necessarily the force that pulls things towards the earth. Gravity is more specific. So when you're taking tests like this, sometimes people will go with the question that is an answer that relates to the right answer, but it's not the best answer. And in this case, we'd go with gravity because that is exactly what gravity is, okay? Now let's go on to number 2. This is required to move an object. So to me, the key to this answer is moving an object, something that you have to move an object. So you think about what is motion. Motion is when you're changing position. So it relates to it, but let's just hold off on choosing that one. We're going to read them all. Remember, you need to read all of your answers. B is friction. Friction, if you recall me saying, friction is what slows things down and make them stop when objects rub together. So we're going to cross that one off. Next one is gravity. And the way that we talked about gravity in the review that I did, didn't really talk about moving an object. It just talked about pulling an object towards the earth. So at this point, I would say not to really focus on that one. Let's just mark it off for now. If you don't feel comfortable marking it off, then just keep moving. Force. Force is required to move an object. To move an object. Force is required to move an object. To put it in motion. So let's stay with that. And acceleration. Is acceleration required to move an object? It's not the best answer because acceleration is speeding up. And going from going from a still position to motion is acceleration. However, it's not the best answer because in order to move something, you have to have force. If you don't have a force, whatever the object is will stay still, okay? So that's why I say force is the best answer. Force puts an object into motion, meaning changes the position, and you have its acceleration. So without force, you can't have either one of those. So go with force, okay? Now that might seem obvious to some people, but you don't know what kind of test question it's going to be, and they may trip you up that way. I've seen plenty of students get tripped up like that. So just make sure you're thinking and don't let it trip you up. Let's go to number 3. When something changes position, it is in, if you know the definition of when something changes position, look for it. So we know when something changes position that it is in motion. Now motion is A, but what are we going to do? We came up with our answer and it's there, but we're going to read all of the answers, okay? When something changes position, is it in friction? It's not, because friction slows things down and keeps things still, so it's not necessarily the best answer. When something changes position, is it in gravity? That's not really a good answer, so we're going to mark it off. When something changes position, is it in acceleration? Could be, but we're not certain because we don't know what position it was in before, so it's a general question. When something changes position, is it in force? That's a weird answer. I think the best answer is that it's in motion because that is the definition of motion, okay? So make sure you know the definitions of the words, and that will be very helpful for you. Number 4, a force is a blank or a blank that causes movement. If you know the definition of force that we talked about in the review, this should be pretty simple. We'll read them all. A force is a push or a taste that causes movement. That's not correct, so we're going to mark that out because taste is not what causes movement. A force is a push or a pull that causes movement. We're going to say that that's true, so we're going to leave it. A force is a pull or a run that causes movement. Run is not correct, so we're going to mark it out. A force is a pull or a lift that causes movement. It probably could be, but that's not the best answer. So we're going to mark it out, and we're left with B. A force is a push or a pull that causes movement, okay? All right, here's the last of the science questions. Question 5, you can always pause and read it, and then we'll do it together. All right, a force can change the direction of a moving object. Is this true or is this false? Excuse me, false. Can a force change the direction of a moving object? So just think about it. If there's a ball that's rolling, can some force, a push or a pull, change the moving object, the direction? And it would be true. If you put your foot on it to stop it, or you kick it in the opposite direction, it changes the direction. So the answer is true. All right, so if you think that you need to go over the review again, feel free to do that. That'll be a great thing to do. And you can find other resources. You definitely have your RAP family here to help you with that, and you have your teachers at school. So between the two, You have plenty of ways to practice. Just making sure you know the material, you know about forces in motion, and being able to answer questions correctly in a timely manner, okay? So, as I always say, it's important for you to exercise your mind as well as your body, and I look forward to seeing you again.